The first question of homework 3 asks us to write a program that asks the user for their birthday and their month, day, and year, then calculate how old the user is based on that day that they gave us, determine whether the user is an adult, and return your results out to the user. One thing I wanted to mention is notice how I've separated each action that we need to perform for this program in a different line. And what this does is it allows you to logically break down these problems into steps. The good part of these homework assignments is that they're fairly straightforward in terms of what they're asking you to do. And so by separating them into chunks, it will help you come up with a solution to solve the program much more faster, I think, than if you were to just look at it as one giant blob of text. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set what today's date is. And so I'm doing this on the 21st of June. So I went ahead and created 3 constant variables that just say what day it is. Notice what's good about having these constants here instead of in the program is that we know, if we do this, let's say 3 days from now, 10 days from now, a year from now, we know where these variables are, and we know that all we have to do is change these variables and the program will still work. Now, I do want to mention that there are better ways to do this, including using some modules that Python has that we can import and use. But since we haven't covered modules and imports, we're going to go ahead and just do it this way for now. So stay tuned for a video on using those import statements in Python so that we can actually use some of these built-in packages and modules that have already been created. And so also, again, I'm doing this in the US, so we're going to saying that the adult age is 18 years old. And so if you're 18 years old, you'll be considered an adult. So the first thing we're going to do is then ask the user for their month. And again, we're just going to ask them for their month in a integer form. One of the things that, again, we'll talk about in more detail in the later lesson is making sure that we're able to, error check the input that users are providing us. For now, we're just going to assume that the user is going to give us a month between 1 and 12. So 1 being January and 12 being December. We're going to do the same thing for the day, and we're also going to do the same thing for the year. Now, our mean of our program gets down here. Okay, so the first condition here is checking to see that if the year that the user was born in, plus the number of years that they're required to be alive, the adult, to be considered an adult, or the adult age, which again, in the US we're going to say is 18, if the current year is greater than the sum of those two, then we can say that the user is an adult. So let's say, for instance, you have somebody who's born in 2000, right? So they were born in 2000, plus the adult age of 18 would be 2018. And since our current year is 2021, which is greater than 2018, we know that they are an adult. Now the second case is where the current year is equal to the user's birth year plus the adult age. So for instance, it's 2021. So let's say a user was born in 2003. So 2003 plus 18 would give us 2021. Now, when you were born in 2021 determines whether you're an adult or not, right? Let's say you're born in December 2021 and it's currently June 2021. So you still wouldn't be considered an adult. You haven't passed your birthday and therefore you wouldn't be considered an adult. So the next thing we have to do is to check to see, have you passed your birthday, pretty much. So to do that, we need to check to make sure that the current month is greater than the user's birth month, or the current month is equal to the user's birth month, but the day is greater than or equal to the user's birth day. And we'll do an example of this in a little bit. And then if neither of these two conditions are met, we're going to say you're not an adult. So let's go ahead and run this. So let's say I was born in June on the 20th, 2003. So we would say we are an adult because our birthday has passed, right? It's the 21st. So we would be 18 years or older. So let's try another example. What if we say July 20th, 2003. So our birthday hasn't passed yet. you're not an adult. So we haven't passed our birthday. Now let's do an example, that would be this first one. So let's say we were born in September. We were born on the 1st of September, and we were born in the year 2000. That would tell us that we are an adult. Now finally, let's try it. Let's say you're a kid, you're born on April 30th, 2015. And so we would say we're not an adult. And so that kind of sums up that. All right, question number 2 on this homework asks us to write a program that creates 3 random numbers. And then we need to determine which number is the greatest and which number is the least. And so we got a hint, in our problem description about how to create a random number using this import. And I just mentioned earlier about how we could have used imports for the previous program and used a different module. So this is kind of giving you kind of an appetizer, if you will, about how that would work, which we'll cover in more detail in a later lesson. So stay tuned for that. But we're going to first go ahead and create those 3 random numbers. So we're going to say random in 1, random in 2, random in 3. We have 3 random numbers. And we're going to go ahead and print that out just so we know what those random numbers are. Again, they're random, so if we didn't print them out, we would have no idea to know if the computer was actually correct or not. So next what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if this first integer is greater than the second integer, and if the first integer is greater than the third integer. If that was the case, then we know that it is the greatest. And you notice I'm using string injection here, and I'm using the %d to tell it that we're inserting an integer into this string. So if this first condition is not met, then we check the second condition. And notice how I didn't simply just copy this if statement and put it in the elif, but instead I changed it to say that my_2 is greater than my_3. And the reason that I'm doing that is because we know that since this condition was not met, my_1 has to be less than either my_2 or my_3. So if my_2 is greater than my_3, then we know that my_2 is the greatest, right? But if it's not, then my_3 would be the greatest. So let's take a minute and work through an example of this. So let's say we had, I'm going to go ahead and type out. So 1 my_1 is going to equal 3, my_2 is going to equal 4, and my_3 is going to equal 5. If we go ahead and run this example, we see that my_1 would not be greater than my_2, right? So this condition would already be not met. But we'd also see that it's not greater than my_3. So anyway, so as soon as this first condition is not met, we move on to this next one. Then we check to see, is my_2, which is 4, greater than my_3? It's not. So we know that my_3 is the greatest. Let's just go ahead and run this part of the code, and we'll see what happens. And you'll notice that the less than is pretty much the same thing, except the signs are a little different. Go ahead and run it. We see we have 87, 46, and 50, and we get the correct answers. We keep running it. We keep getting correct answers. So this is a really good example of why understanding how your conditions work really helps you save some time when programming. Because the reason that we were able to shorten this elif to just check if my_2 is greater than my_3 is because we knew that my_1 had to be less than one of these. And so we're able to build, like the beautiful thing about these elif statements is that we're able to build these logical connections throughout our conditional blocks. So if the first condition is not met, we know that condition is not met. So we don't need to test it anymore. We can assume that it's not met because we know that it failed the check earlier, an earlier check. And so we can then just focus our conditions on information that is new and still needs to be tested. Okay, question number 3 asks us to write a program that presents 5 products with associated prices to the user. Have the user pick 2 products that they want to buy. Calculate the total cost for these products, and then print out to the user the total cost of purchase. What we did here is we created 5 constant variables with the things that we're going to buy, our 5 products, and we set them equal to a certain price. Okay, and then what we did is we printed out to the user, what are the products and what are their prices. And again, the reason that we're defining these variables up in the top here so that, let's say the price of potatoes goes up, and it's no longer 25 cents for a potato. It's like $5 for a potato. All we have to do is change this this line of code right here, and our entire program will still work the same way. And that's why it's really important to kind of do something like this when you're organizing your code. Kind of organize your code by putting some constant variables on the top that you'll have to use repeatedly throughout your program. I also wanted to mention that in our next lesson, we're going to be talking about looping and using some of the data structures or the variables that we talked about in our previous tutorial. And so my point that I'm trying to make here is that we are going to come up with a better way to solve this problem than what we're doing currently right now. Bear with me. Then we're going to do is ask the user for what products they want. So we're going to ask them for product 1 and product 2. Then we're going to check to see if these products are the same product. And the reason that we want to do this is because let's say your user wants to buy like two cheeses. If we know that they're the same product, it allows us to clean up our code a little bit. So it makes it a little easier. Now what we're doing is we pretty much just check, is product 1 equal to equal to product 1 right in our list here? Or is it not equal to the product in our list here? Or is product 2 equal to the product in the list, and so on and so forth. And again, what we can do later on is define some data structures that will hold these numbers here that allow us to program it a little bit better, make it a little bit more efficient. But for now, for simplicity's sake, we'll just talk about it like this. And then here we say if it's the same product, we're going to take our total and multiply it by 2 because we're getting 2 of the same thing. And then finally, we're going to print it back out to the user. Let's say we go ahead and run it, and we say we want to buy product 2 and then product 4. We get 300. So I set milk to be $300, 350 cents.